lot to get through. We have a lot of good conversation we're going to have today. Very quickly, we're going to do some introductions just of our speakers here today. I'm going to just put this up so you can see them. So with us today, we have Amy Jackson Grove, who's a division administrator from the Federal Highway Administration Connecticut Division Office. Commissioner Mark Boughton, who is a senior advisor to the governor for infrastructure for the Connecticut BIL team, and Sam Gold, who is the chair of the Connecticut Association of Councils of Governments, or at least that's who he's representing today. He does more, but that's same for the commissioner. That's who they're representing today. So just wanted to get you familiar with them before we get started. I also want to give a quick thank you to CROG and WTS Connecticut, who partnered with us to pull this coffee and conversation together. And Stephen Nacera as well from the commissioner's office, who helped us just get everybody together and gave us some great leads on what we should be talking about and kind of questions that we should be thinking about for all of you. And very quickly, WTS Connecticut's Transportation Mini-Series is next week on the 6th. If you're not registered, there's still time. And if we have an opportunity later, we can talk a little bit more about that. But there will be a session that Donna Shea from the T2 Center will be moderating on this same topic, and it will be a little longer. I think it's an hour and a half. So, you know, if there's information you don't get today that you want to get, or questions you don't get answered, I would strongly recommend registering for that as well. So with that, we are going to jump right in. I will say, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. You can unmute and just ask them. It is meant to be a coffee and conversation. So sometimes it's nice if people ask their questions out loud, but I understand that, you know, not everybody is going to do that. And in the chat already, we have put a link to a document with some resources for the bill, and just some additional information that you can access if you need to. Any questions on that, you can certainly reach out to any one of us to ask. So with that, we're going to get started. And the first question is for Commissioner Boughton. Can you explain your new role as the governor's senior advisor to infrastructure, and what CT Built is, and your plans to support the funding programs in the bill, please?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Boughton, and I actually have two roles in state government. One is I'm the commissioner of the Department of Revenue Services. So I collect taxes, $22 billion over 40 different tax areas and fees. In addition to that, the governor in November, upon passage of the largest investment infrastructure I think we've ever seen, once President Biden had signed that bill, had appointed me as his senior advisor on infrastructure. So basically, it's my job and the CT Built team's job to implement this really transformational program that spans over 350 different areas that hopefully over the next 5 to 6 years will spend about $6 billion on state of Connecticut infrastructure. And that spends $1.3 trillion nationally all over our states. So a couple things. People say, well, you get to go and hand out checks. That's not really true. I wish it was, but it's not. This isn't like ARPA. ARPA was just a big tranche of money that came to the state, and then they sort of parceled it out to a bunch of entities and agencies and said, hey, we got to recover from COVID. So ARPA was designed for COVID recovery. This is very different. This is not necessarily about giving everybody money. This is more about giving everybody opportunity. And that opportunity is to compete on a national level and on a local level for myriad of different grants that are available, and also the opportunity for our state agencies to leverage new money that's coming into existing programs. So if you think about it in your mind, think about that there are two piles of money. One is the competitive grants where, hey, if you got the idea of a project, you can put in an application once that federal agency issues its guidance and says we want to consider grants. And then the other piece is we're going to go to DOT and we're going to give them more money to work on bridges and more money to work on roads. And we're going to be able to pump up those programs. We call that money the plus up money. And that money, by the way, is already being deployed. If you go out there and you see cones up and men and ladies working on jobs, that is IDGA money, that's bipartisan infrastructure law money, that's CT built money working for you right now. So one of the things that we decided when we were going to do this program was that we were going to work collaboratively with obviously DOT, DEEP, DPH, all these state agencies that touch this money. But we were going to clear the decks of all these existing projects that were out there that never got built. Maybe they were designed. Now we have the money to do that. And that's a lot of what you're seeing going on right now. In the coming years, you'll see even greater new programs, new projects that'll be launched, will be completed or will be designed. And that's the exciting part. On the competitive grant side, cities and towns are allowed to compete. They're out there competing right now for something called Safe Streets. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And they're out there doing the things that they have to do to be competitive and to get everything lined up. And that really comes through the good help of our COGs as well that are helping guide them through this process. So what do I do? My job is not to build stuff. My job is to help people build stuff. I clear roadblocks. I help clean up bureaucracy. I try to get everybody working together on the same page, to be collaborative, to not silo themselves off. We know that siloing agencies or any organization off and not talking to other agencies is death for this kind of program. And my job is to work with stakeholders, the COGs, the mayors, the first selectmen, the congressional folks, the state representatives, state senators, all those people come together. And I try to sort of be the maestro of the orchestra. Is that right? Maestro? Whatever, you know what I mean. The conductor of the orchestra and get stuff done. I report directly to the governor. We meet every 2 weeks. Steve is my number 2. He's on the call. He's part of our team. We work closely with Amy. She's also on the call with our federal counterparts. Great partners, by the way. And we got a lot of work to do. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I know we got a lot of time here. I don't want to take up a lot of time. That's what I do.
Terrific. Thank you so much. On to our next question, which actually ties into what you said about opportunity, right? So the bill is about opportunity for funding. It has numerous grant opportunities. You mentioned Safe Streets and Roads for All, which is one I think a lot of people have heard a lot about and are a little more familiar with maybe. Amy, I'm going to direct this one to you. Out of all of these opportunities, which of them are municipalities here in Connecticut, viable candidates for? There's several of them. They might not all fit us, but which ones do you think do?
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate you inviting me to the Coffee and a Conversation. As Commissioner said, it's an exciting time. A lot of funds coming out to the nation for a lot of important infrastructure projects. So I definitely will have a slant towards the Federal Highway Administration's program, but I do want to include that there are other programs under USDOT modes that the locals are competitive for. So as probably many know, the Safe Streets for All, the notice of funding opportunity did close in September. The office in our headquarters office is currently reviewing those. So while that program, which is the largest opportunity for locals to compete for some great transportation infrastructure projects, is under consideration. I just want people to know this is an annual program, so the opportunity has not closed forever. It's just closed for this year. The expectation is those grants will be announced in January. So that's a big opportunity for our local governments. Those ones are not eligible for our state DOTs. So as the audience here should really pay attention closely to that one. Other ones that are available are the build program, or the bridge program, and the culvert program. I saw in some of the research preparing for this call was some municipalities interested in the culvert program. So that one is coming out soon. So, one of the things that we want to advise the locals to consider as they look at some of these programs is for all of us to be streamlined and most efficient with our resources and the way that we manage the program and administer the funds is bundling is something that we would really like to encourage our locals. And so, Sam, I hope you're going to be working on that element, is helping the municipalities be as efficient and effective as they apply for these grant programs. Is we are considering bundled programs to be more aggressive or more competitive. So those programs are really look into opportunities. Culverts are a great asset to bundle. And so, you know, that one's one that we would like to highlight. There are smaller programs, the electric vehicle, while the state has a formula, there is a competitive. So there's a lot. And at the end of this, I will be sharing the list of the ones that municipalities and local governments and entities underneath the state government are eligible for, but there is just a lot of opportunities, but those three that I wanted to highlight.
Perfect, thank you. And I will just reiterate for folks who didn't catch it when Amy said it, this is just year one, right? So one of the things that we want to make sure people understand is, you know, we realize that like Safe Streets for All deadline passed in September. We're having this today, past the deadline, but that's because there's multiple years that these things will be funded throughout. So something to keep in mind. Amy, I'm going to come to you again. Just if you could quickly tell us what's the difference in the process between the local agencies getting the money directly and funding via the state?
Great question, and a really important question. So many of the programs are going to be direct grant recipients, and the State Streets for All, that one will definitely be a direct grant recipient. And what that means, let's just start with our traditional program, and that's the Formula One that's been decades. Federal Highway has worked with our state DOTs for decades on delivering infrastructure projects where by formula, the funds are given to each state DOT, and that is the only way that those formula funds come into a state is by formula to our state DOTs. We have a relationship with them. We have a stewardship and oversight agreement with them. They have access to our financial management information system, and that's how we put funds under agreement. With the direct grant recipient, the state DOTs are no longer part of that relationship. And so Federal Highway will be working directly with our locals on administering the projects. That means that you will enter into a project agreement with Federal Highway, and we will be having a direct relationship on providing the stewardship and oversight of the funds and the project. So if anybody's familiar with the Tiger and Rays, Connecticut did get Tiger projects. We had two projects that we had direct grant recipients relationships with. So it went through a different financial system, but there's training that will be required for direct grant recipients to understand what are all the requirements, because the Connecticut Department of Transportation is the one that has been really the steward of all the requirements, making sure our locals know the process. They have a very robust framework for how to deliver local projects through the traditional federal aid program. So we'll be providing that training once grants are selected and the locals are named. So you'll be reaching out to, we'll be reaching out to our new local partners and starting that contact. Our division office has put together a framework of how we will create a project manager here in my office in Connecticut, and that'll be the point person for our direct grant recipients. And then we'll start the path of learning what the project is, if it's in the planning process, if it's in the construction project process, and all the steps in between, including making sure that it clears the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, right away, design. So there's a lot of intricacies that we will be working with our direct grant recipients with. So it's an exciting time because we are expecting a lot more. Over the Tiger years, which is about 5 years, we had 2 Tiger grants that were direct grant. We're expecting probably twice that, maybe 4 times that. So, you know, as we look to how we're going to deliver these, we're also going to be looking at risk. Our headquarters office is talking about the delivery model of these direct grant recipients, knowing that right now my office has 18 people. The Department of Transportation, Connecticut Department of probably, I think they're up to 3,000. So it's going to be a very different delivery model. We're going to be understanding risk, understanding a town and their infrastructure. You know, do they have an engineering department, or do they have a single engineer, or do they use consultants? So, you know, there's going to be a very different delivery mechanism for these direct grant projects. So it's going to be an exciting time. But my goal here in Connecticut, and I know my colleagues around the country, we want our direct grants to be successful. And Federal Highway is very committed to making sure that we help them along the way, making sure their steps are done correctly, and we work in tandem so that at the end of the day, we get a great infrastructure project and everybody is successful delivering and spending federal funds.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. I think there's probably some people on the call who are happy to hear there will be some training associated with it if they happen to get the grant money. So
and it happened under Tiger, so we might have some folks on from the communities that did the Tiger projects with us. So they're familiar with some of the training, but at the end of the day, the division office is here to help, and I have great staff here that are committed to making sure we deliver these. So we're here, and we want to make sure you got questions, we'll be answering them.
Great, thank you. Sam, I'm going to come to you next with a question. Again, a little bit about, you know, some of the grant opportunities, but what programs should, you know, the smaller agencies in Connecticut, of which we have many, focus their efforts on?
So, well, thank you for hosting us, and you'll see in the chat my name. I'm the director of RiverCog, one of the state's 9 cogs, and all of you should have contact info for your cog. I'm just putting in the chat right now the link to the contact info for all 9 cogs. You'll find the OPM website. You'll find the phone numbers for each of the cog directors and email addresses, and your cog director can get you in touch with whoever at their agency can help. So I think that the question about small agencies, I think, is I think begs up the larger issue that we have of Connecticut with, you know, we're a state made up of 169 cities and towns. We have small towns and we have relatively small cities, and we are not competitive when we're going against counties or multi-county application in other parts of the country. So we need to be innovative, and we need to be bundling, as Amy just mentioned. And I think the bundling can be done at the state level, but I think it can also be very effectively done at the COG level. And whereas you could so I think there's really no program that's going to be coming out that our towns and cities can take part of if we are innovative in how we bundle the projects, and how we make those projects compelling to our friends at USDOT who will be making the decisions. And I think what's very important as we're thinking about projects, that you're in contact with your COG and your COG staff, because in most parts of the state, the COG is either the MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, but they also may be the entity responsible for your natural hazard mitigation plans. So you can make a disaster recovery or a resiliency argument in your application. We've also been working in areas of environmental justice and regional housing, where we can touch upon equity issues in your application. We also are the federally designated economic development districts, and we have our comprehensive economic development strategies. So for the Tiger, Raise, Build type grants, economic development is key in being successful there. So your COG is this resource of really all the regional planning documents that you need to be able to cite in your application to be successful. And also you may need your COG, because what we found in our region was for Safe Streets for All, we had a town who was very interested in applying, but didn't meet the threshold for the minimum size of a project. So what we put in for this year is for a planning grant. Some of these programs like Safe Streets for All have planning grants, And our goal is to create an action plan that will be a coordinated, prioritized plan that will provide really the input for a future infrastructure grant application that will be compelling and hopefully competitive on a federal level. And I think the other thing for, talking about small agencies, small towns, actually any town, is the issue of match and how unlike the state of Connecticut, our cities and towns aren't flush with cash. They're not they don't have money in their budgets for match for potential discretionary grants. That's where the COGS can help come up with innovative ways to come up with match, leveraging existing state or locally funded projects in your project definition or bundling, finding in-kind match, which is allowed under federal regulations. But you need to do it in a strategic way. If you're taking a state-funded lot SIP project and you're putting it, bundling it into a Safe Streets for All project, that lot SIP project will now be federalized. So you need to make sure you're talking to the COG and the DOT to make sure that things like this make sense. But we can be more innovative and entrepreneurial how we can come up with our match, because if we don't, a city or town may not even apply. And we want as many applications from Connecticut as possible.
Absolutely.
So yeah, to wrap up, I don't think that a small agency or small town really should be limited at all. And I think your COG can help make it happen.
And I'm going to guess, but I imagine that your answer would be very similar if I were to ask you, so not just small agency, but small projects, right? So if they were trying to streamline the process for small projects within an agency, I'm guessing the answer would be very similar, right? Bundling, talk to your COG, work with them,
right.
Just to streamline that process.
And for some of these programs, the MPO can be the lead applicant, but the COG could also facilitate one municipality being the lead applicant, and then arrange for that municipality to receive some support from the other participating municipalities for administration. So, and one item that will come into effect under IIJA is that this year, the U.S. Census Bureau recognized our 9 planning regions as county equivalents for Connecticut. This is important because in a couple of years, the Census Bureau will start creating data along the COG boundaries, and it's not that far of a leap to have the COGs recognized as the county government for those county equivalents. So this provides a new avenue for towns to use their COGs as a vehicle to create to participate in federal programs as a county, and so that's something that we're very excited about, and we'll be able to hopefully create more competitive applications from Connecticut.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Boughton, I'm going to come back to you with a question. So the bill includes rural roads and bridges. Obviously, we've talked about our small local agencies, many of which are rural here in Connecticut. We know that this year's deadlines have passed for certain things, but how can municipalities take advantage, over the next multiple years of the bill?
No, sure. Like I mentioned earlier, this is not ARRA or ARPA or any of those other block grant funds where you just, got a tranche of money and a pile of money, away you go. This is a 5 to 6 year program. They will have opportunities next year and the year after and the year after. Things like SS4, Safe Streets for All, that'll be back again next year. They can start planning now, even if it's planning for the planning grant. That takes some community conversations and maybe some public hearings, however you want to do it, to kind of come to consensus within your local community as to what should be done or what you should be applying for. So there'll be opportunity, as I mentioned. One of the things we are trying to work with US DOT, and they've been fantastic, is a regular funding cadence on this stuff. I've even talked to the White House about a regular cadence of these droppings of notice of funding, because they do tend to put all of us chasing our tail sometimes. We'll be working on one project and then, we get word that tomorrow night a new notice of funding is going to drop. So I think bringing some organization to how that all happens across agency would be really helpful to cities, towns, and states. And so we are all having conversations about that kind of stuff. There are 50 coordinators, and every state now has a infrastructure, a bipartisan infrastructure law coordinator that works with their governor and with their legislature. So things are shaping up. I feel good about it, and there'll be plenty of opportunity over the next several years for those communities to take advantage of this program.
Thank you. I'm going to stick with you for one more minute here. Sam mentioned the match, gave us some insight into some of the creative ways that the COGS could potentially help local agencies with that. Do you have any other creative ideas that are being thought about, from your team's level, or things that you could add to what Sam told us about the match?
Yeah, I mean, putting my mayor hat now on, I was a mayor for 20 years. Having $1 million laying around, or $500,000, or whatever you need to do that local piece is tough to do. And many of us have to go to referendum. We have to go to town meetings. Having a referendum on whether you should apply for a grant that you may or may not get, and you want to tie up $500,000 to do that, is a big deal for some communities, and it's a hard lift and a hard ask. So we recognize that it's probably the number one concern I've heard from mayors and first selectmen about, well, how do we handle this match piece? And just to give you a background, generally these grants are 90-10, 90% federal grant, federal money, 10% local money, or 80-20 even, some of them are. And we believe, and I believe a local city or town should have some skin in the game in terms of putting some money up, right? It helps, by the way, expand the grant. We can do more things with that money from the federal government, and certainly give some ownership to the project for local municipalities. But it is a challenge, particularly these smaller towns that operate on a very tight margin. There's no, cities and towns don't make money. We're not in it for profit, right? We have to break even every year. So you throw a grant at me in October and you tell me I need to have $1 million in December, it's never going to happen. So timing is important. And then also we have to look at, where do we get the money from? Some people have argued, well, they got all this ARPA money. The cities and towns just use that. That money has been encumbered, it's been spent, and cities and towns had expenses to COVID as well. I had to hire nurses, and I had to hire people to go do shots and all kinds of things like that. So that's not really going to be the answer I think that's going to work for us, but I got some ideas. I want to leverage some of our private capital that's out there. I want to talk to the legislature. I'm looking at how some other states are doing this that will meet the requirements for the federal government to get local input, skin in the game, if you will. But also some of these companies and folks that are out there that want to help contribute towards developing our infrastructure. So you'll hear more about this. I think there's a way it can be done. Some states are creating just a straight up pool of funding, and you can apply for that funding and get a check. I don't know if that's the way we're going to do it here in Connecticut, but it's definitely a challenge, but I also think an opportunity for us.
Thank you. And I will just say, because I think, having talked to you and Amy and Sam and Stephen from your office and Elizabeth from Prague, and just as we were kind of planning this coffee and conversation, I would just mention to the local agencies that are on the call this morning, it's new to you, but it's new to all of these folks too, right? So we're all going through this together for the first time. So we have, great resources here in Connecticut, but it's a learning process for them as well. So I think we'll find as we move forward in the coming years that, the commissioners, the team at CT Built and the COGS and Federal Highway Connecticut office are all going to be getting more information, getting more familiar with things, learning from other states and how things are going. So this is just like the very first foray into this for everyone, not just the local agencies. Just wanted to mention that.
No, Melissa, just real quick, I just want to interject that we are way ahead of other states I get calls every day from states saying, how are you doing this? How did you do that? How did you get it, staff? How did you put a program together? How did you talk to your COGs and your MPOs? Those are organizations that help develop these grants. Where did you connect with a person like Amy? Can you call them? I'm like, yeah, just pick up the phone. She'll pick it up, or whoever her counterpart is in your state. We're way ahead of other states, and some states submitted 0 applications for Safe Streets for All this year. 0. One very large state out west, 10 times the size of Connecticut, didn't have a single application come in. We had almost 20. So there's definitely some things that we need to get right. And yeah, it is definitely confusing, and it's confusing for our federal counterparts as they work their way by developing guidance and seeing what works and doesn't work. We just had a call with the White House last week. They want certain things changed that they're going to be working on in terms of process and procedure based on our feedback, the coordinator's feedback. So good stuff, but it's going to work. It's going to work, and you're going to see cranes in the air.
Absolutely. No, and it's nice to hear that Connecticut is, ahead of folks, certain other states, and that we're kind of, for a small state to have 20 applications in when many didn't have any, I think is, speaks to a lot of the resources that we have, many of whom are my guests here today. Amy?
And I'd like to add what Mark was saying from a national perspective. They were expecting over 1,000 to 1,200 applications, and they were surprised to only receive about 800. So to hear a state be so aggressive like Connecticut for going after the funding is really exciting for Connecticut. So I'm just as excited to see what comes out at the selection step in January. So I applaud Connecticut for organizing and getting together and getting these applications in. So, exciting for this state, as Mark was saying, compared to a very large state. Well done.
Yeah, I agree. Sam, coming back to you for a second, we did have a couple of questions and some comments that we solicited from municipalities. One of them was about, having some culverts and the idea of this, Flora funding opportunity. There's for certain things, right, 2.5 million minimum. There's other minimums, things like that. I think we've already kind of covered this. That particular person was saying, is it possible to group these things together? I think we've covered that. But another concern that we heard that I'm hoping you can address is, again, with our smaller municipalities, there's a lot of information out there for them to digest, a lot of information to go through, to sort out, to figure out what's viable for them to apply for, and if they qualify. And they don't necessarily have the staffing resources, the time, the energy with their daily work to commit to that. Is that something that their COG can help them navigate?
So yes. So if you have an idea for a project, I recommend talking talking to your COG. Click on that link, call your director, email them, and start having that conversation, because the COGs vary in size and capacity. I know Capital Region has been able to dedicate a person to assisting towns. Unfortunately, my agency, I am the one who will be helping you, which is great, but there's only so much of Sam to go around. But we all can help. We have the data, we have the mapping resources, and we have the arguments that can make your proposal sexy to the feds. And I think that's how we win. And we show how this is these projects are not just a culvert project, but it's about public safety and resiliency for the next hurricane. How we're dealing with issues of equity and access to opportunity, and those arguments may not be necessarily apparent to your DPW, but your staff at the COG can help. And then I think the other issue of how the COG, other way the COG can help is that we're familiar with the federal process. We're familiar with DOT, and we can help with brainstorming some, bundling or innovative ways that we can try to find your match. And I think that's going to be just key as we move it forward. How do we, get to the point where a municipality is willing to submit that application because they feel comfortable that they'll be able to get the money if they get the application. But I do want to put a plug for the COGs. Even our smallest COGs have some capacity to help, and we're hopeful maybe in the future the COGs will each be able to have a dedicated grant writer to be able to help municipalities. We're not there yet, but it's something which we would like to work towards.
Great, thank you. And also, I plug these a lot when I'm out doing trainings and technical assists with municipalities, but I think we have the benefit of our regional transportation safety plans, right? So we already have a lot of information that's been culled for municipalities by region. And so, I know I've been telling folks, look, you're part of the way there on some of these with that regional transportation safety plan. Go look at it if you haven't, X municipality, and see what's in there for your town or your city, and start there if you don't have any other starting point.
And I think that's a great plug. That's exactly what we are planning to do if we're successful in getting a action plan grant under Safe Streets for All. I almost said Safe Routes to School, but is to really create that prioritized, bundled program of investment across municipalities in the region. And that's something which is really the next step from those safety plans, is going through the safety plans and actually creating prioritization across the region, and taking it to the next step to actually be an action plan, which sets you up for that application, because your action plan should be your argument for future infrastructure funding in a future round. So that's how we're approaching it, and also remember the IIJA is, I think it's a 5-year law. So we're only down. We're not too late. So even if your project is not ready yet, you could be working for next year's application or the application 2 years from now, and potentially be successful. So it's never too late.
I agree. Don't mute yourself just yet, because
Okay.
So we heard Commissioner Boughton say there were 20 applications from Connecticut. Can you give us a little bit of an insight into how many of those were regional proposals, if you know?
I actually don't know how many were regional, but I do know of some regional ones. Like I think I mentioned the Southeast Connecticut COG put in an infrastructure proposal that leverages LOTSIP, which is the local transportation investment capital investment program, which is a fully state-funded program. It's also state and municipal, because municipalities pay for the design. But that is money that's not used as match for anything else. So there are opportunities out there where we can be much more entrepreneurial in how we go after federal funds. And so I know that in the capital region, I see Elizabeth Sanderson from CROG is on the call. They put in a regional proposal that's being led by one of their municipalities, who is the applicant.
Okay.
So yes, there's many different approaches for both infrastructure and planning.
Absolutely. Because we have Elizabeth on the call, I am just going to have her say a quick hello. If you are a municipality in the capital region, you want to know Elizabeth when it comes to this program. Elizabeth, not to put you on the spot, but if you want to just say hi and tell the, especially the capital region folks, what it is you're doing there for them.
Sure. Thank you, Melissa. And just good to be here with everybody and part of this exciting group of professionals. Elizabeth Sanderson, I'm the BIL coordinator at CROG, or IJA coordinator, IIJA, however you want to say it. It doesn't matter, but we are the people here to help as with any questions about any projects that you're interested in, and to review the notices of funding opportunities as they come out, and working to write up memos on to try to just narrow the information down to what the key points are for the opportunity, as well as hoping to host webinars in the future on the opportunities that where towns or other entities are eligible applicants. But we did have success with the CROG did submit an action plan grant, as well as we partnered with the town of Farmington as a lead applicant for an implementation grant. But we do have a website that we've set up too that everybody can access. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a CROG member town for that information to be, accessible or helpful to you. So, but some of the memos that have been created in the past are on that website, as well as the upcoming notices of opportunity that just came out last week. So thank you, Melissa, and nice to
Yeah,
meet
of
everybody.
course.
And I can put my email in the chat as well. And I think Aaliyah Miller, who is our communications manager, put in the link to our website. So
She did.
please
She's
feel
super
free.
fast. I just saw that pop up. I'm like, oh, Aaliyah just dropped that link right in there. So great. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, I mean, obviously not, as Sam mentioned, not every COG is going to have an Elizabeth, at least not right now. But as she mentioned, a lot of the information that they're compiling, they are putting on their website and sharing. And so it's accessible to everyone. So that's always nice. Commissioner Boughton, I'm going to come back to you just to say ask this question. I mean, we've heard how the COGs can help. What assistance is directly available from your team as folks navigate through the bill?
Hey man, we do it all, right? We spend a lot of time engaging with stakeholders. It does freak some people out because they think we're promising like new highways and bridges to people. But, we understand that everything we talk about with a mayor or first selectman or a state representative or a state senator or a congressperson really has to fit as part of a comprehensive approach to moving goods and services around our state. So I just kind of want to throw that out there because we do come out. We met with almost half of the mayors and first selectmen. I like to look at the project so I understand how it fits into that matrix of challenges around our state in a comprehensive way. But also I can relate that to people who also look at these things, particularly in our DOT, who, by the way, we're blessed with a great commissioner. Joe Giletti's awesome. He's a rail guy. He is actually a worldwide expert on rail, right? I mean, and he actually lived 10 minutes away from me for many years. I didn't even know it, and we kind of synced up. So we're blessed with that. We've got Amy that's there for a resource to us as well. So we don't get ourselves into too much of a jam, but we are there to listen, understand, and to carry that message to whatever agency has cognizance of it. So we will help also people go through that huge document, find out what is there available to them. Is there a grant potentially that they never even thought about? Remember, there's almost 400 different programs. And so it's impossible for people, particularly a smaller town, to sit around and go through this documents. Well, that's what we do. People like Steve and Taylor, our other employee, they read this stuff, Then I was telling Sam when I first met Sam, I go, Sam, the guidebook to the guidebook, all right? The guidebook to the guidebook is over 400 pages. So you got to read that, and then you got to go read the guidance from each individual agency, which is going to be, a couple hundred pages as well. These folks don't have time for that. They're getting kids to school, they're filling potholes, they're buying textbooks. So we're there to help take that stress off of them. We don't write grants, but we can certainly help them and direct them on how to write a grant and pull it together. And we certainly are not afraid to carry the water to whether it be the White House, whether it be the governor's office or anywhere else for local cities and towns. So pretty much we'll do anything you need. Reach out to us, contact us. Steve, put up our email and contact information in the chat, and we're there to help you. And help interface with our state agencies who are doing a phenomenal job with this as well. I might want to add.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And I will say, you know, Stephen, in your office, it has been wonderful. We shared early on, so the first thing you'll see in the chat is a link to a resource document. For those of you who didn't hear me say it at the very beginning, that is there. If you click on it, it's some links to several different resources. There's one that is specifically for the Notice of Funding Opportunities. There's one about the IIJA specifically. There's some other resources. You know, those are all resources that Stephen from the Commissioner's Office actually shared with us so that we could put that together for you all. So he's been a big help as well. So we appreciate that. I have another question that is near and dear to us at the T2 Center. So for the past few years, we've been working with local agencies on training and educational programs for drone use in public works. And there seem to be a few grant opportunities coming out of the bipartisan infrastructure law to support the development of those UAS programs. I'm gonna throw that out to whichever one of you wants to answer that or knows anything about that, if any of you. So that's an open-ended question. Amy, I see you've unmuted already, so I'll go to you first.
So the unmanned aerial, the drones program has been an emerging technology for federal highway. I know a lot of DOTs are using them for a lot of activities that reduce their exposure to traffic, thus improving the safety. So federal highway has been a huge advocate, and I can't remember the exact name program, but I can get it to you of it's looking at innovative technologies such as drones that are going to make us more efficient and effective, but also safer in our work zones and out in our infrastructure. So definitely something federal highway is involved in, and I can get to that too. I just didn't have it just right now, but
Yeah,
definitely an exciting time. We've done some drones here in Connecticut with Connecticut DOT and with some local. So it's already being done here with great payoff. So, I'll get you that information, Melissa.
That'd be terrific. And, we can certainly share that. We can get that information out to folks if you share it with us, Amy. I appreciate it. It is something that, the T2 Center has been focusing on the last couple of years. And I know a lot of municipalities, both from a public works standpoint and a law enforcement standpoint, are looking at drones. So, definitely something that is, as you said, one of those emerging technologies that I think we're going to see a lot more of.
Right, and yeah, mentioning that the LTAP Center, but also the police department, state police have been using this for after crash documentation. It has been the department did a rollout that they documented that going to a crash that had a fatality has a higher level of documentation, of course, to understand what happened. They took the documentation down from hours to like fragments of that. So it's just been an amazing addition to our industry. So great stuff happening. And I know that the training, I don't know, Delaware has got a very robust training program because using these drones around traffic has some particular safety needs, of course. So, having that kind of training, and I know our LTAP Center is a great facility to do that for our stakeholders. So, good stuff coming in that area, and I'll make sure that I get you that information because it's an exciting addition to the funding that's available through Bill.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I just took a quick peek. I don't see any specific questions in the chat, but I do see a lot of information that we have been sharing. So I'm hoping folks are clicking on those links and saving the information. Oh, I just saw Laura's hand go up. Laura Francis, feel free to unmute yourself and hi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mark and Amy and Sam, for a lot of good information. I just want to echo a lot of Sam's comments about how the COGS can help. but one thing that I think it would be helpful, and maybe you can help with this, Mark, is what we're learning more and more is that the federal government would like to see our planning documents, as Sam say, support our projects. And their emphasis on planning is evidenced by their eligibility for some of this funding is for planning documents. So there are some buckets of money that want to see certain things inside those planning documents. For instance, Safe Routes for All, they want to hear you talk about your Vision Zero goals, et cetera. So if we could compile the elements in planning documents that we have already identified as kind of essential for competitive grant applications, I think that would be helpful for all of our municipalities and our COGs to kind of have a cheat sheet of all of that. So, and this is really good timing to do it because we're already starting to plan our 2023 UPWP update, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a request that I think would be helpful.
Thanks,
Sure,
Laura.
great idea. And that's we'll get to work on that, Laura. Thank you.
We did have a couple of questions come in the chat. One of them was the name of the culvert grant program that's coming out, and then I love the chat. Someone has already answered that question within the chat with the link to the name of it and the link to it. So that's always wonderful. We had another question come in. The question is, we have a shovel-ready project estimated at $5.5 to $7 million. Are there any upcoming grants for shovel-ready projects?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can apply for both, depending on when what they call the notice of funding, when that drops, and when the deadline is. You could apply for both construction as well as planning. It just so happens that a lot of people don't have, they don't like the term shovel ready. I forget, there's a new term for it, but essentially, you know, if you're ready to go with something, absolutely, you should be out there. It is not retroactive, though. I've had people ask me about, you know, well, we've already started construction. Can we put in for maybe if it's phased, but generally no. If you've already identified a funding source, you have to run that out. So definitely, one of the things that everybody wants to, you're getting some questions about typical areas. There is a searchable document that Steve can post a link to. I think he's doing it right now.
He just did. He's
Yeah,
so good.
and you can use keywords like sluice gate or dam, and it'll show you, it'll pull out everything where dam is mentioned in that, whether or not there's a grant available to that. So use that document. It's pretty good and valuable. You don't have to read the whole thing, but it kind of cuts down all the aggravation of having to flip through the whole thing.
Perfect. And that actually addresses one of the other questions that was in the chat. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. Laura commented, rather than shovel ready, she said, I think we're using quick build as the term she put in, but we'll go with that. Sure. So yeah, and the, you know, we're getting some response, but yes, Stephen did post that link, which is fantastic. That is searchable. Like the commissioner said, I would say, you know, we need to clone him, right? I think we all need a Stephen. Like, I see
I'll
you
have to
there.
check with my wife to see if she agrees with you on that. I don't know.
Well, at least
hopefully
from
she does.
I don't know about, you know, from your personal standpoint, but from a professional standpoint, we could use a few more of you, I think.
And then,
Melissa, I would be quickly, Steve, if I could just interject, I would be remiss if I did not mention, first of all, thank you, Steve, for all the work you do. But, you know, the President's Justice 40 initiative is woven through every one of these grants and every set of guidance that's issued. And that's really as a play towards equity and to treating those communities that have been poorly served or underserved equal to those communities that have received a lot of services and investment. You should know that your applications for these programs that's weighted in that process of the award, and how well it impacts folks that maybe never got any access to these kind of grant programs. So that's important. Regional projects are important as well. And remember that infrastructure is not only about roads and bridges. It's also about things like broadband and sustainable energy and all kinds of electric vehicles and all kinds of neat stuff. So it's a really exciting time.
I think, so we had a question come in. Farmington's looking to create a new river crossing over the Farmington River. What programs are available for this new bridge? I think, Stephen, is that an answer that you just posted in there? to that
Yeah,
question?
so just
you.
verbally, DOT is receiving in the what the commissioner mentioned as plus up funds. They're getting out, I want to say it's, don't quote me, but 560 million for new bridges over the 5 years. So, not all at once, but and they have a plan for that. So my recommendation to Dylan was simply to reach out to DOT and see how you can slot into those funds and work with those folks. Because there's, frankly speaking, and I think the commissioner alluded to this, there's a lot of money, but there's a lot of work. So I don't know, it may not always, the demand may be heavier than the supply and these dollars, but that's definitely the best route to follow. If you hit a logjam and need help connecting to someone, reach out to me and I'm happy to connect you to the right person over at DOT.
Thank you very much. And I see Sam has his hand up. You don't have to raise your hand, Sam. It's okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, I just wanted to just remind everyone that one thing that we would like to avoid in this state is applications that are coming in without any attempt of communication between all of the potential supporters. And so here at the COGS, even if it is an application from Central City, I think your application can only be helped by bringing it to the COG, getting an endorsement from the COG board, which in any of the urban areas would be also the MPO board, and being able to get that vote on the record and a letter of support written from the COG. And facilitating that conversation in advance, and because I think generally we'll be more successful, but also I think our goal here, regardless of what city or town or what region of the state, is to bring more money into Connecticut, and to get more projects here, regardless of where that is. So I think everyone is on board in supporting everyone's applications, because it's not about a one town or one city versus another. It's about Connecticut versus the other 49. So I think as long as we realize we're all on the same team here, I think some of that parochialism can be broken down and we can get more money.
Thank you. I'm going to give Amy and Commissioner Boughton 30 seconds if there's anything quick you want to wrap up with before we end.
I did want to add to Farmington's question and Stephen's, definitely work with Connecticut DOT on new bridge crossings. Many of our bridge programs are really about existing bridges. As you know, our nation's bridges have some challenges. And so a lot of the funding is trying to address the deficient bridges and functionally obsolete bridges. And so all those programs use the National Bridge Inventory, and in the information that I'll be sending out, there is a link to understand if you have a bridge that's in the National Bridge Inventory that meets the criteria. So you're just on new crossings, definitely work with Connecticut DOT. New bridges, new infrastructure, new highways are a very different animal, because we're really looking at trying to bring our current infrastructure into good state of good repair. So there's my little parting.
Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Commissioner?
Yeah, thank you very much. Remember, infrastructure work is never done. It's never finished. So it is a process, but we've got 6 years, I think, where you're going to see some very exciting transformative things happening, not just in Connecticut, but across our nation. Particularly, we didn't talk about EVs today. I'm almost there. I want to get me one of those F-150 Lightning pickups from Ford, but I'm not quite there yet. I got to see more charging stations, and you're going to see more of those over the next several years. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate you being here.
I'm with you. I would love one, but I need to see some more charging stations. I mean, I drive all over the state. I can't end up in, the eastern part of the state. And I'm just using that as an example, but anywhere I go, if I'm 2 hours away from home and I can't charge my car, I don't think my husband's going to want that phone call. Come and rescue me. Yeah, see, Sam needs them too.
Yep.
So I really want to thank everyone for your time this morning. I think this is an important conversation, obviously, and we're going to continue to have it, I'm sure, over the next several years, but a lot of great information. I want to thank Commissioner Boughton, Amy, and Sam for their time, Elizabeth and Stephen too for jumping in and giving us some assistance, and really thank everyone for attending. As we mentioned early on, we did record this session, so it will be available for folks to reference later on, and for other folks in their agency who maybe weren't able to attend this morning. So we have reached the end of our time. An hour goes by fast, but thank you very much for spending it with us, and we'll make sure to get the information out that we mentioned here today. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.